While we excitedly anticipate the return of Christ, we don't know the date or the time. In fact, biblical scriptures tell us that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. And with that being the case, don't you think it would be smart for us to be prepared? Jesus told stories when he presented his message to people, fitting those stories to their experience and their maturity. He was never without a story when he spoke, and one of those stories was about being prepared for his return. So, let's get into the story and discover the takeaways. There was a man about to go on a journey, and he called 3 of his servants together and entrusted them with his possessions. To the first he gave 5 talents, to the second he gave 2 talents, and to the third he gave a talent. The first went out, he did business, and he earned 5 other talents. The second went out, he did business, and he earned 2 other talents. The third went out, he dug a hole, and he hid his master's money. After a long time, the master returned to settle his accounts. The first came in and he said, "Master, you gave me 5 talents. Here are 5 talents more." The master said, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a little. I will put you over much. Enter into your master's joy." The second came in and he said, "Master, you entrusted me with 2 talents. Here are 2 more." And again the master said, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a little. I will set you over much. Enter into your master's joy." Then the man with 1 talent came forward and he said, "Master, I knew that you were a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. I was afraid, and I hid your talent in the ground. Here!" But the master answered, "You wicked and lazy servant, you know what kind of man I am. You ought to have at least put it in the bank so it could earn interest. Now take the talent from this man and give it to the man who has 10, and cast this wicked servant into the darkness where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth." Wow. So, what kind of takeaways are there in this story that prepares us for Christ's return? Well, let me begin by telling you a hard lesson that I learned. A few years ago, we pulled up our roots, we sold our house, and we took our family to Mexico. I was out of place, I was poor with the language, and I felt useless. I remember saying to the Lord, "Lord, I am a 1 talented person in a 10 talented world." You know, when you feel weak and you feel useless, when you're in a difficult spot in life, it's easy to feel as though you have nothing to offer, you have nothing to give. Well, listen, that just isn't true. Scriptures tell us in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, listen to this, where God arranges things in his body just as he wishes. And he says this, "The parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable." You know, you can live without an eye, but you can't live without a stomach. You need your big toe more than you need a full head of hair. You are valuable, and the talent and the abilities and what God has given you is just what you need for his use as you wait for his return. And that brings us to our key spiritual insight. Listen to this, believe it, and act upon it. As a child of God, you are an instrument in His hands, regardless of how much you have been given. So settle that in your mind. Trust that it's true, and you'll be in a better position to learn the lessons from this story. So let's get into those. First takeaway is this: use what God has entrusted to you. Remember, the person with 5 used their 5 to earn more. The person with 2 used their 2. But the person that was given 1 didn't use it. They hid it. Now, before you say, but it was only 1, it was such a little amount, I understand why he hid it. Know this, that it's much more than you probably realize. And God has given us more than we think. When we think of a talent, we think of like a music talent or a talent in leadership. But in the Bible and in this story, it's different. A talent was a weight of measure. So it was like saying that he was given a talent of 50 pounds of silver. That sounds like a lot, doesn't it? Well, it was. It was about 16 years worth of labor for the average person. That was a lot of money. So what God has given us is exactly what we need. As we look around and think, well, that person has more, they can do more, they're in a better situation. No. God has put us exactly where we need to be, and He's given us exactly what we need, and we use it for Him. Use your gifts for Him. And first of all, just brag on Jesus. Tell what a difference He has made in your life. Tell about your salvation. Tell about your forgiveness. Tell about your story of coming to Christ. Tell how He has brought abundance and peace and hope and direction in your life. Just brag on Jesus. Hey, another thing that you can do is just smile. Just smile. Do you know what a difference it makes when you smile at someone? It lifts their spirit, it encourages their day, it makes their day. And everyone can offer the kindness of a smile. Another thing you can do is just give a helping hand. Hey, do you need help with those groceries, getting them up the steps? Can I help you get to your appointment? Could I help your child with their math? Or be a prayerful person. Being a person of prayer is so powerful. You're coming before God's throne and you're bringing the other person. And it's such a powerful thing to say, I'm praying for you. Now, you might also be a teacher. You might be an encourager. You might have a little bit of extra money, or you may play music skillfully or sing well. Whatever God has given you, use for Him. What you have, and it's not what you don't have, that we use to reflect the many benefits of God's coming kingdom. And we tell the great big story of what He's doing to redeem and restore the world and to put it back exactly as He intended it. And that's what we do as we wait for His coming. Secondly, don't be afraid of what others think. The person with 1 talent hid it in the ground. Why? Because he was afraid. When people are big and God is small, we don't do the things that God has given us to do. And what a contradiction that is, to make people big and God small. No, God is sovereign. He's almighty. He's all powerful. And it's the people in our life that are small. Have you heard of playing to an audience of 1? That means that the person that makes the difference in our life, the being that makes the difference that we play to, the audience of 1, is God Himself. And when we do that, it removes the fear that we have of other people. Fear is just a tactic of the enemy so that we don't take a risk for God and we don't use what He has given us. And finally, the last takeaway is when we use the gifts that God has given us, we reap bountifully. To both of the first two servants, the master said, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a little, I'll set you over much." So here's a money principle that I think also applies to what talents and abilities and things and money that God has given us. It's from 2 Corinthians 9, verse 6, and it says this: "Whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully." So we use what God has given us as we wait for His return, and we use it now. Now is the time. Remember what Jesus said? He said, "We must work the works of Him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work." It's while we wait for His return that we can wait and we can use what He has given us. Until then, we are privileged to be instruments in God's hand, regardless of how much we've been given.